Already Booked, the official podcast of the Jacksonville Public Library. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Gabby. On this episode, we interview Anna Claire Hodge. She's a poet, professor, beauty blogger, and former Instagram influencer, among many other things. We chat about everything from her greatest literary inspirations to the common misconceptions people have about perfectly put together girls on Instagram.
Anna Claire opens up about the struggles of being an artist and trying to make her mark on the world after getting her PhD in creative writing from Florida State University. We had a raw, real, and inspiring reflection on her journey as a creative and how she found her voice.
Now, her work has been featured in several publications and she has exciting projects on the horizon. She's incredibly passionate about the work she does as a writing instructor at the University of North Florida. She's an incredibly delightful and intelligent person to chat with, so if you're desperate for some creative inspiration, stay tuned.
So without further ado, here's our interview with Anna Claire Hodge.
All right, so thank you so much, Anna Claire, for joining us today.
I'm so excited. Ever since I saw this was a podcast, I've been like, how can I finagle my way onto this? I'm glad it worked out.
Well, we're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background and education?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Ocala, Florida, went away to do undergrad at College of Charleston, and that is where I fell in love with writing and poetry specifically. That led me to get a master's in fine arts straight out of undergrad, which is way lamer than straight out of Compton when I'm thinking about it. But I went to Virginia Commonwealth University to do my MFA, and that just threw me headlong into the world of literature. And once I was in, I don't think there was any getting out. I certainly tried maybe to go back to journalism afterward, but it was poetry all the way once it happened. Yeah. After that, I flailed really hard. So I feel like that's important for all your listeners to know that graduate school is not a guarantee of anything, especially a master's degree at this point. So many more people are getting them. So I flailed. I wrote a column for a little paper in Orlando. I lost all of that stuff. And finally decided I'm just going to give it a shot and apply to a PhD. I had no idea what else to do with my life. And I figured I'll just apply and I probably won't go, but let me just apply. But if you ever get a call saying that you've been accepted to a doctoral program, you're going to go, It feels too good. What are you going to say? No, I'm going to keep working at the eye doctor where I'm doing eye exams, which is what I was doing at the time. And I was not good at it. You should never have me check your eyes. I was at one point making up blood pressures on a sheet when I had to take blood pressure because I was so bad at it. So I clearly had to go for the PhD. And so I did that. And while I was there, got to teach as a graduate assistant, fell in love with teaching and realized that I couldn't do anything else. That working with young people, teaching them to write creatively was the greatest high in the world. And so continued chasing that all the way to my job here at the University of North Florida, teaching everything from freshman writing to advanced fiction workshops and things like that. So yeah, that's the condensed version.
And how long have you been teaching at UNF?
This is my third year, and we're hoping I can stay on. I'm kind of making my case to stay on. Right now, my title is visiting instructor. So I've got 3 years to do that. So we're trying to figure out how to keep me. I have made my case. I really want to stay. UNF is, what's the tagline? No place like this, no one like you, or something
you
like that?
You never finish?
Or, that was the alternate tagline. No place like you, no place like this, I think.
Yeah, well, I love it. But I feel it's so homey. And, after teaching at FSU, which is Hogwarts. Right. I mean, I remember getting so out of breath walking between my classrooms where I would teach, and that UNF just feels I don't know, like a academic house party, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And Amanda and I are both English major alumni from UNF. So we experienced that the class sizes are just perfect. They're kind of medium. So it's not super tiny, but you still have a very intimate connection with all of your classmates and your professors. So I love that about UNF.
Yeah. I'm so glad that I'm not making this up. You feel it too.
Definitely. And what's your class structure like?
Oh, that's a great question. So every day is different. My goal is to always, so right now I'm teaching 5 sections of a freshman composition course. It is a lot of freshmen. And we have a great time. So we do everything from just on the fly in-class writing assignments to right now we're talking about social commentary. So we're reading some Vonnegut, some Jonathan Swift. We're talking about satire. So, but yesterday during class, we at one point someone passed out cookies and then we talked about the civil rights movement. So you never know where it's going to go. But I find that when, first year writing students want to talk about something, as long as it's not just like memes, we're probably going to talk about it because it's such a special time for them that they need to know that what they have to say is important, even if those thoughts aren't fully formed yet. So if my classroom can be a place where they can experiment and try to
Find their voice.
Exactly. Find their voice, figure out what they think. I tell them all the time, there's this stereotype. My parents are Republican and they're probably going to listen to this. So shout out mom and dad. But there's this stereotype of the liberal professor who is indoctrinating their students. And I tell my parents all the time, like, I don't know where this came from. Because I always tell my students, like, my politics don't have a place in the classroom. I'm here to tell you how to learn to think rather than what to think. And so that's always my goal. So if we get a little off topic, that's fine with me as long as we can make it worthwhile.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important for students to have that exposure their first year. Like I know for me, I had a few, and they were both adjuncts too, just a handful of professors in the English department that really just sparked my love for it and inspired me to pursue that as my major. And I really feel like you're doing that for this new wave of students. It's really that first 2 years that make a huge difference.
For sure.
Thank you. I want them to feel, safe and heard. And because I'm 34, but I think I lean a little young, at least just in my interests and the language that I use. I mean, I use the same slang as them. So like we're able to vibe on a different level. I don't know. It's so great. It feels like family with authority,
right?
Like I'm the mom, obviously,
Absolutely.
but it's such a special thing. There's this one section I'm teaching right now, and it's at the end of the day. So I'm so dead. But when I walk in, and these are students we've got sorority girls, we've got like a guy who's really into cosplay, like across the board. But these students are vibing so hard that it's better than any party I've ever been to. For real. The best conversation, belly laughs, but also rigorous academics. I realize I'm ranting, but I just love them
not at all.
So much. And it's just such a gift. I don't know how I was given the authority, I still feel like a kid myself, but it's the greatest gift to be able to work with young people. And they do, like, it's such a cliche, but they keep you young.
Absolutely. I feel like you're exactly where you're meant to be with this.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very like hippy dippy spiritual, but I agree. Thank you.
I know. I want to sign up for your class.
I know. I'm like, can I just drop in and audit the class?
Help me find my voice again, because I'm getting to the point where
It's sad you lose it if you don't use it. It's really true.
I know.
And how did you find your voice?
That's a really good question. It definitely took, again, some flailing. I'm just going to go ahead and be open and say that much of my life has been flailing. I know that, if you go on my Instagram or meet me in this, scenario, I must seem extremely put together, but like it took so long, so long. But finding at least my writing voice was very much like that. I've always leaned toward the narrative. I love storytelling in any form. And so when I started really writing poetry seriously, I was so young. So I'm thinking like 20, 21 in my like advanced creative writing classes. I didn't have many stories of my own to tell because, like every family, we had issues, but mostly my youth was pretty normal, right? So I didn't have many fraught things to talk about, except maybe like some, shitty college boyfriends or something. So yeah, I mean, my first poems that started being successful were stealing the stories of my family members. So talking about something that my sister went through, or writing about my mom's childhood growing up in the Deep South. And I started, that's where I learned to work with narrative and image, which are the two most important parts of what I write. So I until I started making my own stories just by living my life, growing up, having things worth writing about, I wrote about other people. When I got to grad school, though, this is kind of embarrassing, but I started dating this poet who lived in New York, and he was an experimental poet. So he was super inspired by the New York school. That's so great. Frank O'Hara, James Schuyler, all of that.
What exactly is experimental poetry?
It is exactly what it sounds like. So there are all these different kinds, right? There's language poetry, which is where, this is going to be a terrible description, but all I can remember from reading language poetry is that it's supposed to be about like more the sound of the words rather than the meaning of them all together. So it certainly wasn't narrative. And then there's flarf, which is, I'm not even going to try to describe it. Many other kinds. Oulipo, whole worlds that people don't know exist. And I am not going to diss them. I will just say it's not my thing anymore. But at the time, I'm going up to New York every couple of weeks. I'm hanging out with these older writers in their lofts, smoking cigarettes. And I'm like, this is sexy. This is fun. It also seems very easy. And so, as a young writer in a grad program, I was just like, pivot. And I pivoted to doing something that I knew that I could pull off for the time, because I think I was really scared to fail at what I really wanted to do. Also another cliche, that fear of failing, so you don't even try. But that's what I did. But I had full funding at a very prestigious grad program. Like, I was wasting my time turning in stuff to workshop that I didn't care about at all because it was easy to churn out. Luckily, though, a woman who has now become one of my best friends, the poet Tarfia Faizullah, just released her second book. She's incredible. She's at the top of her field. She came over to my apartment one night, probably prompted by the faculty. We were smoking cigarettes on the back porch, and she just said, "What are you doing? Do you even want to be here? Like, you're writing stuff. We can't even find a way in to workshop it. None of you is in this work. What's going on?" And it was such a vulnerable moment. I felt it certainly didn't feel like being attacked. She just wanted to know, like, do you even want to be here? Because ultimately, she didn't say this, but there were people who would much rather be in that spot rather than waste the time of everyone. And so I started pivoting away from that experimental poetry and started really trying to tackle what I loved, which was narrative poetry. And once I started doing that and working with certain professors who were fostering that growth, then things started really happening for me. So the long story it took to answer your question, that is how I found my voice, by trying on different personas and realizing what wasn't working. And when you get in your pocket, when you find that groove, because it feels right and people start responding to it. And that's what happened to me. And once I started writing that work and really focusing on craft is when I started getting published. And when the world takes notice, well, you have to jot that down. Like, okay, this is working.
As someone who has been published in the academia world, how did you find your voice and your passion in your fashion blog?
Okay. So again, this is coming from one of those flailing moments. So once I finished my PhD, I did not have a job. I had a doctorate, which sounds fancy, but you also need a job to go with that. I took a chance on love and moved to Jacksonville for a boyfriend at the time. I've been online dating for about a year now, so I can tell you how that ended. But but here I am, right? And so I was very unemployed, which means I was unemployed and not having a good time. I was not enjoying that time off. I was just feeling really bad about myself. Like, what am I doing? I've got, I want to be teaching. I've got this degree. What the heck am I doing? And so I've always been into clothes and makeup and all of that. It's always provided kind of something to counterbalance the, ivory tower academia stuff. And so I started posting pictures of my outfits on Instagram, just iPhone shots, usually shot by friends that I forced into doing it. And they were, just regular outfit shots, but brands started taking notice. So like K-Swiss shoes reached out to me. And I'd grown up wearing K-Swiss. So, of course, I'm like, what? I am chosen. I am a fashion model now. Like, it felt so good. And they were like, hey, we want to send you free shoes if you'll take pictures with them. And then other brands started doing that. And for someone who feels really bad about themselves, about where they are in their career, that's something to do, right? So I was like, yeah, I'll do this. And, when you grow up with, feeling like a nerd with body issues, like, it feels real good when people on the internet are calling you pretty or hot, or, like random people are sliding into your DMs to be like, I love your style and blah, blah, blah. So that feels really good. So I just started hitting that hard. I also didn't have a ton of friends in Jacksonville when I moved here. So it ended up being this incredible networking opportunity. I started getting invited to events listen, I understand the connotation of this word, but as an influencer, so like someone who could promote local openings, who could promote local brands. I started modeling in a yearly fashion show, working with local boutiques. So things just started crazily kind of popping off. And I was like, this is not what I expected my life to be with a PhD in poetry, but here I am. And so I just went with it because it was fun. It was really fun. I was getting recognized. I started finding my own community here in Jacksonville that had nothing to do with my partner, which was very important, was to find my people.
It was also a source of income.
Well,
oh no,
I'm going to go ahead.
I'm always interested in like how much are people making off of these sponsored.
I'm happy to clear some stuff up for you. So for me, I never made money. What I did get was free stuff. Free stuff is great, right? But not when it comes with strings, and not when it's something that you were never going to buy for yourself in the first place. So like an electric toothbrush brand, we're like, we want to send you our toothbrush. All you have to do is post about it. And at the time, what it feels like being chosen. It feels like I am so awesome and so cool that they want me to promote their stuff. So it was just like a big ego boost. Like, talk about the biggest dopamine hit in the world, right? Jay-Z has this line. He says, fame is the worst drug known to man. It's like worse than heroin, he says, which is a great rhyme when you think about it. But it's true. So even getting a little taste of being known, like I started being recognized out at bars. Some girl, not some girl, she's now a good friend of mine, came up to me in the bathroom at Birdie's, which is never like a very sober moment, a few years ago, and was like, oh my God, are you to thine own self be trill, which is my Instagram handle. And the look on my face was probably just like, yes, I am famous. This is all happening. And, I make it sound really gross, and it's not that gross. I just think that I think that it served a real purpose in my life, which was to meet people in Jacksonville, to be able to spread my wings a little bit with fashion and beauty stuff. And, but ultimately, like, it's a journey, and you find what works for you. And, what a therapist and self-help authors say, right? When something is no longer serving you, you have to let it go. And that's eventually what happened for me. I started the blog to go along with the Instagram, and it was a really fun way to write about girly stuff, right? To break down my skincare routine or talk about a trip to Iceland and what to do there. And I really enjoyed it, but I just found like I was kind of watering myself down in a way that didn't feel good. That the more time I spent taking photos of outfits or products for brands, or me, faking something in my house, like fake reading a book or something. Like, the pictures are cute, but I felt the longer I did it, I was moving further and further away from my intellectual life and just authenticity. But the thing was that I kept espousing on my Instagram page was authenticity. I'm so authentic. I'm telling you the truth. And I was, but I wasn't. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's it. It wasn't feeding me. It wasn't feeding my soul the way that I needed. And this past year for me has been one of intense introspection, intense pain, like I said, online dating, so intense pain, but also just figuring out who I am at the core by myself. And I'm not an influencer. That's not me at the core. I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller who also really likes clothes. And that has to be enough.
And I feel like the whole Instagram influencer realm has changed so much in recent years too, that at first you could it was different. Like when they first started approaching you, it didn't feel, now I just feel like everybody is promoting something and it's just, everything's an ad almost.
Yes.
Which I'm sure affected your feelings toward it a lot.
But it did, of course. So I'm not going to say that me, quote unquote, getting out of the game is completely because I just want to be an intellectual. Like, that's not true. Also, it started to be that, it's not just the marketing world, that individuals decided to, or maybe felt compelled to brand themselves. And if everyone turns themselves into a brand, what kind of authentic connections are we making? Where are the real conversations happening? And it just didn't feel fun anymore. And like, if you have a hobby that's not paying your bills, it better be fun. And I started noticing that, when someone's feed is every photo is an ad, it erases the person.
Exactly.
All you're seeing is ultimately, like, you're getting used. So I hope, there are some influencers that are pulling it off and they are paying their bills this way. They're going on free vacations. Their apartments are free. Get it, girl. But that wasn't me. And I don't want this person that I've worked so hard to create. I've been through so much anguish and so much joy. And it's like to put a hashtag sponsored on that person didn't feel right anymore. And and this is no shade. I've got great friends who are still doing it, and they're going gangbusters. They're doing it and they are pulling it off. But for me, I was like, every professional photo shoot that I have, every few $100s I spend on outfits for these photo shoots, every, fill I get on my eyelash extensions, what could I be doing with that time? And I'm not saying that I'm using that time to, to volunteer or always be writing or whatever it is, but I just felt like too much of my brain is going here when I really want to be fostering real connections. And I found that once I quietly kind of pulled back, that I feel so much better about myself.
I can get that. I mean, I 100% understand that. I feel like it's a really brave move on your part. And,
thanks.
I think it's kind of a relevant topic in our age group because I do feel like so many people are on Instagram and so many people, like I've never been an Instagram influencer. I take photos of my kids and I hardly even post to Instagram anymore. But for a normal Instagram user to see those type of posts, I'm like, well, my photo is nothing like that. So do my photos even count?
Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, because I mean, if you scroll back to like the very beginning of my Instagram, it was just regular photos. And I got to the point where I was not going to post something on my grid unless it was perfect.
And I can't imagine that pressure. Like, how much time do people take to have like the most perfect curated
and
Instagram feed?
The After Effects presets on there, the Lightroom presets.
The presets. So what I was doing, because at first when I started posting outfits, I didn't realize that fashion bloggers weren't just taking pictures out in their life. I had no idea. I thought they were just taking really awesome pictures of them walking around in life. I had no idea that they were setting up whole shoots. I was like such a dweeb, like so innocent. I was just snapping photos walking into a restaurant or, out with friends at brunch. And that felt more real. But then I was like, this is exhausting. I can't get all the photos I need if I need to be posting every day. And you kind of have to game the algorithm to get in people's faces, right? And that's the whole goal. You want to be seen more. You want to be double clicked more. You want to have people save your posts. It's like this gamification of posting a photo. And so I started working with professional photographers. So we would shoot a whole month's content in 2 to 3 hours. So I would post a photo every day, but I shot them on a Monday morning at 8 a.m. wearing like a nighttime outfit on the streets of Avondale, full makeup, full hair,
Oh my God.
Wow.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I feel like we're like the truth revealed, like behind the
curtain.
scenes. Yeah.
No, exactly. So a whole month's content. And when that content started running out, I would have to do a new shoot. So, I mean, and listen, it was fun. I'm a creative. So scouting locations and being able to create evocative images, like that's not easy, right? And the photographers that I worked with, Kelly Martucci, Michelle Calloway, and Michael McDaniel are incredible. And we did some really fun stuff. I look back on those pictures and I'm like, these are gorgeous. We really made something here. But I also wasn't writing.
Yeah.
And, all of that time could have spent, it just, basically, I had to take a look at myself in the mirror and not in a vain way, in a real way, and be like, do I want to do this anymore? And I kind of fought with myself for a while. I battled because ultimately, like, I'm vain, I'm human. And despite the fact that I have, staked my life on intellectual aims and creative aims, doesn't mean I don't want people to think I'm beautiful. I was also newly single and very vulnerable. So that's another way to control the narrative surrounding you, right? Like, I'm fine. I'm pretty. I'm available, and so fashionable. I'm untouchable. Well, here's the thing. I'm not untouchable. This has been one of the hardest years of my life. And to post all of these gorgeous, bulletproof photos of myself was, yes, they were real photos. Yes, they were outfits that I put together. I did my own hair and makeup. Yes, they were locations I scouted and stuff like that. But it didn't show me like desperately sad and swiping for love. Those photos didn't show me questioning my worth as an artist and a writer. They didn't show me fully embracing my power as an educator. They were something very, very different. And I think that beauty and fashion are worthwhile. I'll never give them up. But there's so much more to me than that. And I just couldn't keep up the facade anymore.
I feel like you could write like a whole book on this.
Actually,
or poetry.
So I'm working on an essay about it right now that I'm trying to pitch to, I'm thinking like Jezebel, Roxane Gay's online magazine, because like I want to tell the truth about it and be like, yeah, a couple times this past year, I felt like I was losing my mind. And in order to find my mind, that works. I had to pull away everything that I was covering up my pain with. And Instagram was absolutely one of those things because it was a way to appear to everyone else. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Don't worry about me. I'm put together. I've got this great outfit on.
I'm so fun.
Yeah, I'm so fun. I'm so carefree. Oh my gosh. These Drake lyrics that I'm going to caption this photo with, like, I'm so quirky. And yeah, I am. Right? That's part of me too. But
like, you're better in person.
Thank you.
than on Instagram.
And that's the thing is that like, if I want people to see me and know me, well, I need to go out in the world. I can't do it online anymore. I just can't.
It's so important for people in your position to be transparent about that too. I feel like a few influencers will try, on occasion they'll post a big paragraph about how not everything's as perfect as it seems. I have my days. And that's about the extent of their transparency.
I did that too. I absolutely did that too.
But that was like the start of your, and now you're living it. Like,
right.
It's so important to be honest about who you are. I mean, the photos are beautiful and Instagram kind of creates this perfect world, but there's so much more to people. Like, humanity is so much more complex and deep than that surface. So congratulations, I think.
Oh, thank you. I feel like this is my coming out party.
Yeah, absolutely.
But and I also noticed that like the people closest to me, I could tell that some of them were kind of getting turned off by like that version of me, right? And that hurts. It felt like, oh, I don't want this friend that I love who knows me to the core to be turned. And then it just you just have to reevaluate. This whole year has been reevaluating, getting back to the core of who I am, and determining that nerdy girl, who sometimes cries in her office at work, or whatever, like that bookish, curvy girl is fine exactly the way that she is.
Do you feel an immediate weight just lifted off your shoulder? You can go to a restaurant and enjoy just the ambiance and eating your cute meal that would make a great photo, but you can just not think about it and just enjoy it in the moment.
You can, or it's like I get to choose. That is the thing, is I want to choose what I want to document. And the pressure of not posting all the time and just getting to take photos for myself, post them if I want. I still share products that I love, that I buy myself. If I find a mask, a face mask that is amazing, I'm going to tell you. I give book recommendations. If there's a great sale going on, I'll let you know. But I don't want to be controlled by anyone but my own heart and my own head. So if I'm required to post about something, it takes away some of the magic of recommendation, right?
Totally, because consumerism is such a huge part of our lives. I mean, we're always buying things. So if you're promoting something that you wouldn't usually buy.
And there were a couple times I did that, and I finally deleted those posts from my feed because I couldn't even bear that they were there anymore. A watch brand, and the watch was so cheaply made. And it was clear to me after doing a little research that their entire thing is just based on sending it to cute girls on the internet, and the cute girls on the internet wear it, and that it's like such a cheaply made. And I'm just like, I guess I'm done being a cute girl on the internet. Maybe that's it. Or maybe a cute girl on the internet that sells things.
Sure.
Let's take off the last part.
I think you're still a cute girl on the internet.
And the thing is, it's still okay to want to be a cute girl on the internet. So I tell my students this all the time. You can hold two opposing thoughts in your head. I mean, yeah, you have to. I feel Walt Whitman says his line from Song of Myself is, do I contradict myself? Therefore I contradict myself. I am vast. I contain multitudes. And I guess that's like my whole story. I'm vast. I contain multitudes, but I'm taking that part out. I'm just removing that multitude.
Yeah.
So what projects are you currently working on now that you have a little more?
So I mentioned the essay that I'm writing, which is kind of the behind the scenes of my Instagram journey. What else? So my dissertation for my PhD is a manuscript of poems that I titled Fabulous, which is like the first time I've really told many people at all about that. So yeah, that's my book. And I've been trying to get that published through small presses for a few years now. It's had some nods in some contests, which has been exciting, but still hasn't been chosen for publication. So my job is to not just keep forcing it upon the same contest every year, but to revise it until I feel like it's really there. And if everyone's passing on it, well, it's not that they're dumb and don't have taste, it's that it's not ready. So what I'm doing right now is going back through, trying to find places where maybe there's a poem missing, a poem that needs to be written. Maybe there are poems in there that are just filler from, my MFA program that just need to go. So I'm trying to figure that out. And this book is, God, it's my heart. So I chose the title Fabulous because, I do, part of my persona is big personality, red lips, platinum hair, all that, right? That seems fabulous. But also, fabulous can also refer to stories that don't seem quite right. So it's a word that feels precious to me and really sums up what I'm trying to do in the book, which is ultimately look at womanhood through the lives of two women, my mother and me. So she grew up, mid-century, and we dealt with a lot of the same things, just in very different ways because of the time periods. So it's kind of exploring our stories side by side in poems that kind of go back and forth between the timelines. So looking at love from her perspective growing up, love from mine, heartbreak, all kinds of things. I'm not going to give away all of it, but so it's very much about Southern femininity and what that looks like for two different people who happen to be mother and daughter. So I'm revising that. What else? Teaching. So I'm still trying to come up with new curriculum that's going to wow them and get them excited. And then also I'm still involved in the fashion stuff. I'm hosting a fashion show soon, doing a makeover TV spot in a couple days. So I'm all over the place. But it feels good. I need a lot to feel creatively tapped in. But yeah, so revising the manuscript, and I've got a couple poems coming out in New Orleans Review pretty soon that I'm really excited about. So those will be published online in a couple months. So new work is on the horizon. But yeah, just trying to do it all, like a modern woman. Can she have it all? We'll see.
Can you tell us a little bit about your writing process? Do you have to have coffee or Can you write anywhere?
So my writing process is very much like Outback Steakhouse, which is to say no rules, just write, which is it happens when it happens. There's so many writers who I am so jealous of who say they get up at 5 a.m. and they, make their French press coffee and they sit at their desk, which is overlooking this beautiful tree, and they write for 2 hours. That is not me. First of all, not a morning person. So the poems come when they come, and when I've worked in journalism, deadlines made it happen. I tell my students all the time to try to get them to understand I am not a joyous writer. I don't sit down and, pull at my lapels and I'm so excited to write. It feels like exorcism for me. When I feel a poem coming, it's not, it's more like ugh. Because I know what's about to happen on the page is some purging of something. It's going to be an exploration that's not going to be easy. So, for example, one of the poems that's about to appear in the New Orleans Review, I wrote it about these beach weekends that I have with my girlfriends a couple times a year. My parents generously offer their beach house. And so we've been going for, it seems like forever, since we were teenagers. And I wanted to write a friendship poem and a beach weekend poem. It turned into one of the darkest things I've ever written.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to read it.
Because
Can we do an on-air reading?
I would be happy to. And it's, I wouldn't say it's sad, but it's certainly not like, hey y'all, let's go to the beach, get your White Claws. It's not, it's tough. Because it's about real life and womanhood and yeah. So no, I did not enjoy writing. I don't enjoy writing poems. I write them because I have to. I'm not a painter. I'm not a singer. I've tried like hell to play the guitar and I just can't. This is the one thing I found to make sense of life. And it happens on the page. And it doesn't feel good because it makes me look at things that are hard to look at, and then find a way to talk about them. And then when they get published, pray that they do, lots of people read them. And therefore, my business is out in the world. It's a whole thing from start to finish. The process isn't fun, but it allows for me. It's not that whole I write to express myself. I write to understand. Because once I've written a poem about a certain incident in my life, a certain time, a certain feeling, I am able to understand what really happened and how I felt. It's kind of like when you go to therapy and you tell your story and they're like, oh, what I hear you saying is, that's what my poems say to me. My poems reflect my life back to me and allow me to revisit those times and to process.
Again, so brave. I feel like so many people aren't, willing to confront their own devils.
Oh, I do it every day. and no, not every day. Listen, I'm avoidant just like anyone else. But I figure a moment of, Brene Brown, who the incredible, basically sociologist who writes these amazing self-help books and studies vulnerability, it tries to beat into us over and over again that vulnerability is where the good stuff happens. And ultimately, vulnerability is just not being able to control the outcome. Putting yourself out there and saying, I don't know what's going to happen, and just being okay with that. And it is so uncomfortable, but I know that those moments of vulnerability for me have offered the most growth and ultimately understanding of myself. And so I continue doing it, even though it scares the hell out of me every day. But, what do we gain from being comfortable? Nothing. I can't go through life in my favorite pair of emotional sweatpants. I just can't.
In reading through some of your poems online that have been published, it kind of, the voice is so unique. You can tell you've really established your voice.
Thank you.
It sort of reminded me of modern day Sylvia Plath with her 21st century woes. You paint these scenarios that just feel so real. And whether you're, in New Orleans or at the beach house, and just, some of the objects around you are things that every woman can imagine in their head, but the pacing of everything and they're just so beautiful and so raw. And I was blown away. It was just oh my gosh. And it's so unique. Your voice is really, really beautiful.
I really don't think we can go through this podcast without having her do an on-air reading. I mean, talking about her poetry, we have to let your listeners know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be honored.
Do you have like a perfect poem for this? Or
I don't know, but Gabby, you pick your favorite. And
Okay. What about, how do you feel about New Year's Eve, Key West?
Oh, I love that one.
Okay.
I haven't read that one in a minute. Yeah, this is like my mom's favorite. She'll be so sweet.
Oh, ignore my cracked
Mine
phone
is
cover. Okay,
really
cool.
bad. All right, this is one of my favorites. This was published, Lord, years ago. But I kind of consider myself the queen of the breakup poem, which is not some sob story. It's just, I think, a way to kind of document and put on a shelf a former relationship, you know? So, yeah. This one's called New Year's Eve, Key West. Somewhere on Duval, a drag queen named Sushi descends from a rooftop in a giant cherry red high-heeled shoe, and the day flakes away like grouper. The city below erupts. Moments apart cheers waft through the fronds of a palm that we can nearly touch from our hotel balcony. You photograph me, all bedroom eyes, slugging decent champagne from a tumbler as the island's house bands strike up their out-of-sync Auld Lang Synes. When did we stop locking ourselves away, inspecting each other, turning over and over like jewels under the loop of morning? Once, you said that good palms cost $1,000 a foot, or 100. Because I cannot remember, I want to ask you this, to let you again tell me something very true. Like the waitress at the Marina restaurant who told us to steer clear of the chowder, it's canned, as we sat, ate the last meal of the year, the boat full of drunks roped to the dock, cast again and again a string of beads on a fishing line. And as each man bent to snatch it, he startled as the necklace leapt, then snaked away.
I got chills.
You're so kind. Thank you.
So I know earlier on with your writing, you did pull a lot of inspiration from other women in your lives' stories. Now,
Absolutely.
Do you pull more inspiration from your personal life, or is a lot of it still sort of fiction?
No, it's all me. I would say I've lived enough to have more stories than I think I could ever tackle. So yeah, for me, it's all real. And that's scary to say because I've published some work that, I've got some that deals with mental illness, with you name it, it's there, it's out in the world. But what better than to document the messiness and the utter pain and, ecstatic joy of what real life is. So, I'm sure some might think that it seems navel-gazing to only write about my life. But to them, I say, I've earned it. I have earned every one of these poems. And they'll continue happening. I know that more joy and more pain is on the way. And I'm ready to tackle it on the page, I guess. I gotta be.
And looking back at old publications, how has your work evolved? Is there anything tangible that you can see? Like when you go to write a poem today, it's vastly different from a poem you wrote 5-10 years ago?
Sure, yeah. I think for a while that I couldn't relax on the page a little bit. The lines feel tweaked so far to perfection that I think you lose some of maybe, maybe the messiness. Messy is a word it's been coming up a lot the past week for me, the messiness of life. I think it's better than saying like train wreck or something because like train wreck kind of like is like an identity, right? But messy is something we can all be. So I kind of want to play more on the page. I wrote a poem recently that I managed to get Sephora into it, which has been like, I've been trying to make that happen. I want Sephora in a poem so badly. And I started doing that thing that I used to do where I was just like getting the lines just like so perfect. And I was like, I got to relax this poem a little bit. This poem is at a makeup store. It needs to chill. So yeah, I think I'm trying to not adhere so much to a perfect sounding line and rather allow the reader in a little bit more. During my dissertation defense, one thing that, it broke my heart to hear, but the poet David Kirby, who was my dissertation director, said, we feel like one of the main faults of your poetry is that you look at the thing and then you turn away, rather than like full throttle, explore whatever it is. And And that's true. I mean, being a young woman who grew up to not air dirty laundry, don't tell secrets, certainly don't. I mean, sorry, Mom, I've been doing it since college. And she's like, shaking her head, I'm sure, somewhere. But it just, I want to look more head on at things rather than turn away at the last second because it's too much. So I would say more, I'm trying to push more toward vulnerability on the page, like even more. Like I know it sounds like vulnerability, but what I want to do is try to, I don't know, to not look away from the thing, to stare at it so hard that it is unbearable, but necessary.
And how do you feel about Jacksonville's literary and art community?
Man, moving here was the best thing I ever did. You know, the reason I moved wasn't for the community, but I found it. And I am blown away. People have no idea. Between the photographers and the writers, Jacks by Jacks Literary Festival, the writing professors out at UNF, the talent in Jacksonville is just mind-blowing. And I could sit here and just name everybody, but y'all already know. But also the support. I have never felt so supported and cherished as a creative than I have here. I mean, up at FSU, I had a lot of friends up there. I learned a lot, but I will say the spirit of competition was intense. And Jacksonville, it feels like we understand there's room for everybody. There's not a scarcity mindset here, at least to me. It feels just like being lifted up and celebrated. And maybe because, we're not New York City or we're not Chicago, that I feel like we're very protective of our creatives here. And the fact that I can even say we, knowing that I'm a part of it just brings me so much joy. So I'm not trying to leave Jacksonville anytime soon because I feel like we just lift each other up and celebrate each other. And yeah, it's such a joy to be here.
And who are some of your biggest inspirations for your writing?
Okay. As far as like vulnerability and truth telling, Roxane Gay is a beast. She's just incredible. Her last book, Hunger, oof. Like as someone who grew up with hardcore body issues and self-esteem stuff, like reading about her journey, the journey of her body, Lord, she's incredible. The poet Tarfia Faizullah, who I mentioned, her latest book, Registers of Illuminated Villages, is just, it destroys me. She's a Bangladeshi American poet who grew up in West Texas. So like her story is amazing. She continues to just blow me away. Caveat, I should say she's one of my best friends, but that doesn't mean she's not just an incredible talent. My latest book obsession and writer obsession is this 30-year-old writer who writes for The New Yorker. And when I read her, I am filled with fury because she is so young and so talented. Gia Tolentino wrote a book called Trick Mirror, and it's essays on self-delusion. Oof. She tackles the internet. She tackles reality TV. Gia Tolentino is amazing. Let's see. Right now, those are my top three as far as inspiration. My friend Lindsay Sproul, who her first YA book is about to come out. She's incredible. It's called We Were Promised Spotlights, and it's about growing up as a queer teen. So good. So yeah, I mean, the amount of incredible work being put out right now is just like, oh my God, throw me off a bridge. I'll never be able to read it all. But yeah.
And do you have any advice for writers who are trying to get their own work published? Like the rejection, how much of it can you take? Like
a lot. You can take a lot.
What do you do with the rejection letter?
Rejection for me, it used to feel so personal until I worked for a literary magazine. So what I should tell writers about rejection is that you are going to be rejected so much. It has nothing to do with you or the value of your work. What it so often means that, maybe you wrote an incredible poem about a wedding, but that journal already has a poem about a wedding or marriage lined up and they can't take another one. Or maybe they love your work, but it's just not a right fit. So there are so many different reasons. I mean, think of it like dating. You can tell that I've been dating a lot. But you got to think of it like dating. I had a friend tell me about this date she went on with this guy in Tallahassee, and she was like, he's perfect. He's gorgeous. and successful and funny and well-dressed, but we just didn't click. And so you kind of have to think about it like that. Like sometimes you just don't click. Sometimes your work doesn't click with editors, but they still love it and they see the value in it. So I like to have work out at least 10 journals at a time, because that way at least editors are seeing my work, they're learning my name. And every rejection letter you get, it means that someone considered your work, that you were brave enough to send it out, and they read it with a keen eye, because they do. I worked as a poetry reader for the Southeast Review, which is at FSU. And I read each poem with such care and tried to be gracious to each writer. So just know that a rejection isn't a middle finger. It's not this time.
That's really good advice, because I feel like it's really hard to not take it personally when you send, I mean, I know toward the later years of the English major, your professors encourage you to like send things out to at least 3 publications, and you're just like dreading it. You're like, I just know this isn't going to get in. And then some students' work actually got in, and it was this amazing feeling. And it's all about just being persistent. And
yeah, unfortunately, if you want to be a writer, but you aren't willing to engage in the business of it, sorry. Like, I have to put together the documents and write the cover letters and get them sent out and then pay the fee, all of it. It's all part of it. So if you leave your work to languish in your journal or on your laptop, it will not get published. Like, no one's coming knocking on your door. And that would be my biggest advice, is that you must be proactive. But also, you need to be a good member of the community in which you write. Subscribe to literary journals, or at least read them online. If you see a poem or a short story that you love, write to the author. I mean, please, it would make our day. Also, tweet about it, post on Facebook. I saw this incredible poem. Like, you can't expect to be given all the beautiful gifts of this community unless you actually engage in it as well. And that's my biggest piece of advice, is be a member of the writing community. Don't just try to get published for publication's sake. Like, join this world. It's a great party. Like, come over, please.
That's great advice.
Thanks.
How do you feel about CreateSpace, the like Amazon self-publishing tool?
Oh, man, self-publishing. That is one, that I don't know enough about to speak on. I will say that self-publishing definitely has a bad reputation. We like we like writers to jump through the hoops and I'm of 2 minds about it, which is like, wait for a press to pick it up, wait for a journal to pick it up. But then also it's like, why not just get it out in the world? So I don't know. There's a big conversation to be had there that we don't have time for today about gatekeeping and tastemakers and what's legitimate and what's not. That's so hard.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I need to find out more and just find out more. I like to admit when I don't know something.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to let our listeners know?
Sure. Just a little shameless self-promotion if I haven't done enough of that already. I would love for y'all to read my work that's been published online, which you can find at www.annaclairehodge.com. I'd plug my blog, but I told you I'm not really doing that anymore. I'd love to connect on social media, preferably Instagram or Twitter. Facebook seems prefer to keep that a little bit more private, but keep an eye out for my new published work, and thanks so much for joining me.
It was such a pleasure, Anna Claire. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, I'm honored. This is great to be able to talk about writing in a library with 2. Come on, this is fantastic. I'm thrilled. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Completely Booked. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. To check out Anna Claire's work, visit annaclairehodge.com, and we'll be sure to provide the link on the library's site as well.
For more stories about interesting and inspiring people in Jacksonville, visit jackspubliclibrary.org/podcast for more episodes.
Also, be sure to follow us at Jack's Library on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for updates on future podcasts and all library happenings.
Until next time, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Gabby.
Bye guys.